Our podcast sponsor today is strategytraining.com. If you want to strengthen your strategy skills, you can get the overall approach used in well-managed strategy studies. It's a free download, and you can go to firmsconsulting.com/overall approach. That's firmsconsulting with an s.com/overall approach. And if you're looking to advance your career and need to update your resume, you can get a McKinsey and BCG winning resume template as a free download at www.firmsconsulting.com/resume PDF. That's www.firmsconsulting.com/resume PDF.
This will be a very short podcast discussing some of the challenges I think candidates face when they're doing sanity checks on both their full cases, but especially on estimation cases. And for those people who worry that, they may not face estimation cases and they're going out of vogue, I can assure you that estimation questions remain at the forefront of the way management consultant firms test candidates. Even if you are not going to get a standalone estimation case, within a broader case, you're almost certainly going to have to do some kind of estimating calculation. So what I want to focus on here is how you do the sanity check. So assuming you run through your analysis and your calculation, you come up with an answer at the end. How do you know if that answer makes sense? Well, it's very simple. Let's assume I asked you to estimate the amount of money spent in the United States per year eating out, whether that's going to restaurants, whether that's eating out at lunchtime and so on. What is the total figure, right? And let's assume you came up with an answer of 600 billion, for example. Now, many candidates would say something like, well, 600 billion seems like a very large number to me, so I'm going to say that the number is too large. That's a very inefficient and basically illogical way to do a sanity check. What you should always do when you get a number at the end is convert it to a number that you can relate to, that is intuitively easier for you to understand. So in this case, if I was doing the sanity check and I got a number of 600 billion, I would divide that by 300 million, which is the approximate population of the United States, to get an answer of $2,000, which is telling me that each person in the United States is spending $2,000 per year eating out. And I'd ask myself, okay, if I was an average citizen of the United States, is it logical that I would be spending something like $2,000 a year eating out, right? Which is roughly about $180 a month, give or take. That seems pretty high to me. So I would say the number doesn't pass the sanity check. So I'm going to look at my calculations and my assumptions to see if I made a mistake. And if that doesn't work, I'll look at my equation. So let's try a different example, right? Let's assume I asked you to work out the dollar value of green grapes consumed in Switzerland. And you crunched your numbers for the population of Switzerland, and you came up with an answer of, let's say, $38 million per year is spent on green grapes in Switzerland. Now, how in the world can you determine if that's a logical number or not? Because 38 million for an entire country is a number that you cannot intuitively relate to. So you have to reduce it to a number you can relate to. So what I would do here is I would say, well, I'll assume a population of 10 million in Switzerland. I'll assume 4 people per household, giving me 2.5 million households. So what it tells me is that if we're spending $38 million on grapes and there's 2.5 million households, that means each household is spending roughly $15.1802 per household per year, right? That's a more intuitive number. So I'd ask myself, is it logical that a single household across an entire year would be spending just over $15 on grapes? It seems too low for me, right? If you reduce that into, say, number of weeks, that's about 25 cents per week? Seems too low. I mean, I know that food and vegetables tend to be more expensive in Europe, so the number seems too low. So the moral of this podcast is that when you are given an opportunity to test the sanity of your calculations, it is expected that you will take that number and logically convert it to a number that you can relate to. Now, when you are converting it to a number you can relate to, please do not introduce new unusual numbers into that conversion, because then if you introduce unusual numbers, you don't know if the number that you are converting to that is more intuitive is correct, because you've introduced some uncertainty. So what you should always do is try to use other ratios and numbers from your case when making that conversion. This is the way you should do a sanity check at the end of your calculations, especially for estimation cases. Take the final answer and convert it to a number that is intuitively easy for you to relate to. Numbers that you cannot relate to, that you don't know how to put yourself into that situation, don't work with it. That is why per capita numbers work so well. If you read books from the World Book, if you read any major publication, whenever they talk about GDP growth, electricity usage, cell phone usage, it's always per capita. They always divide it by the number of people in the population. That way, it's easy for an individual to understand if the number presented makes sense. You should do the same thing with the answers from your estimation cases. Now, there are obviously many other nuances in the way estimation cases are calculated. I mean, the broader calculation, not just the way you do sanity check. And people that work with us know we use a very different technique. But I'm not going to talk about those things because I do find that while most candidates don't know how to do estimation cases, I think the part that everyone should at least be good at is how you do your sanity check. So you may have different techniques to do estimation cases, some more efficient than others. But when it comes to sanity checks, you have to be very, very focused. And you have to produce a structure and a style that makes sense across all situations.
As we wrap up, today's podcast is sponsored by sanity-checks. If you want to strengthen your strategy skills, you can get the overall approach used in well-managed strategy studies as a free download. Go to firmsconsulting.com/overall approach. And if you're looking to advance your career and need to update your resume, you can get a McKinsey and BCG winning resume template example as a free download at www.firmsconsulting.com/resume PDF.